God is with you. This is the Courageous Hour with your host, Keith D. Williams, former Wayne County Commissioner. Listen and be inspired on the Courageous Hour on Glory 1340. For grace, for favor, yeah. This is my sweet. When you raise your hand and say, I've got a seed at the ground. Come on,
Okay. Good evening. This is the Courageous Hour. Courageous Hour is about elevating, strengthening families and elevating kids through a wonderful system we have created since 2012. My hosts, we have Laura, Linda, and Steve. He's not here today, but we are the team that's been together mighty, mighty long time, spreading good news about kids and families throughout our system. Um, like I always do, we have jobs at the Wayne County Sheriff's Office. If you're 18 years old, high school diploma, GED, with no felony or anything like that, come on and get these jobs. It's not about a job, it's about a career. We start off at $50,000. After a year, you get a $2,500 bonus, and you get health insurance and vacation, and you get your tuition paid for. So I'm telling you, it's a good package. You can work and go to school at the same time. So we need anybody who's eligible. If you want a job that leads your career, call me at 313-215-4121. So what's up with Laura? Laura, my friend.
Hey there, Keith. And to our listening audience, you're listening live to the Courageous Hour here on WCHB this evening. And we wanted to just do a continuation of what we had last week. But let me get the bona fides out of the way. I want to first say thank you to our sponsors. Thank you, Continental Foods, for your continuous support for all of our community games and activities. Thank you so much. Thank you, Wayne State University, for allowing us to use your very tremendously appointed accommodations over at the facilities for all of our events and games. Thank you, St. Joseph Mercy Hospital. Thank you, Detroit Public Schools. Thank you, everyone who's helped us, including the Wayne County Commissioners. If I've missed you, it's because I'm super excited to see what we're going to have lined up today. But if you're interested in learning how you too can support the activities that happen at Courageous throughout the year, we've got 24 hours a day of connectivity and connections, but we have 12 months of programming. So please pay attention to how you might actually be able to support your own grassroots community. So for more information, here's Keith's personal cell phone number. I love giving it out. His personal cell phone number is 313-215-4121, 313-215-4121. That's his personal cell phone number. Now we are going to get right to it because my screen is lit up with a lot of bodies on this end. You guys can't see them. You can only hear out there in Radio Land. Let me get you ready. If you're ready to call in and talk to us, the number in the studio is 313-837-1340, 313-837-1340. Like, I am so exuberant. I'm so excited and passionate about the discussion. Last week, I mentioned to our audience that I've been out canvassing, door knocking, trying to get information out to our community. And I was just beyond befuddled and completely confused with the number of people who were yet undecided or didn't have all of the information they needed or felt conflicted. So I promised you that I would try to reach out to our networks and bring on people who we believe can help you flesh out what you need to know in order to actually make sound decisions around when to vote, whether or not this particular policy is real, if this thing is that thing. You don't need to hear it from Laura because, that's not my brain trust. My job is to connect the people who can actually give you content and real solutions. So I have on the call with us this evening, I've got Mr. Eric Williams. I'm going to start with you, sir. Give us your intro.
Sure. Hi, my name is Eric Williams. I'm an attorney. I'm managing director of the economic equity practice at the Detroit Justice Center in Detroit. Also a former assistant professor at Wayne State University Law School.
Fabulous. Ryan, you go next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Ryan Kostanecki. I am a proud graduate of Wayne State University, just recently of the political science program there. I have my PhD in political science. I've been teaching at a number of universities around Michigan for the last decade, and found myself at home at a full-time position in Macomb just recently. So yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Excellent. Thank you so much. My own pastor, Dr. Pastor Terry Thomas. You go next, sir.
Good evening, everyone. I am Reverend Dr. Terry Thomas. I have the privilege and I'm proud to serve our congregation at Christian Fellowship of Love. I have been pastoring now for over 2 decades, and I'm very thankful that Sister Laura has asked me to be a part of this conversation tonight.
Keith, we've got another guest. Can you give me the particulars, Mr. It says K. Mill.
I don't know who that is.
Okay.
Laura Sigmund, this is Kevin Miller from the city of Flint. I received your invitation and decided to join.
Okay.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Okay. All right, so there we go. Everything is out there. So again, the number in the studio is 313-837-1340. Guys, we were talking about a number of different things last week, and I really want you guys to have the opportunity to speak to the people who can level set the conversations that we need to talk about. There was a woman who I think called last week, an older woman called last week, and she was yet unsure with who she should actually pledge her vote, her commitment in this election. Let's talk about it. What, Keith?
She was confused.
Stop it. Stop that. We're going to be nice to people. We're going to be nice to our callers. We're not going to bully anybody. We want to hear what your concerns or issues are. I think we have everything on this particular call. If you're interested in participating, let us hear why you're undecided. What is keeping you from going to the poll? What are you hearing in the national news, local news, on your social media feeds? What are you hearing that you need someone to like dissect and give you good information? That's fine. Like what do we want to do? Who's our caller? Don't be timid. Tell us today. Let's hear it. I heard from several of you a number of things that needed to be talked about. Don't go silent on me now. 313-837-1340. What do we need to talk about? Why are we so confused or uncommitted with less than like 20 days left to actually vote? We've all got our absentee ballots already. You're in a position to actually tick off all the boxes and put this whole thing behind you. For some of you who are still yet going to maybe do early voting in person, that is coming up. What are some of the conflicts or questions or concerns that you may have? Please, I've got a whole deck. I promised you that I would, so that I'm not the one trying to lead you. I don't want to lead you. I want you to get the information so that you can be self educated and informed. So give us your questions. Who's our caller this evening? I'd like to, while we're waiting for our callers to come, guys, I actually put in the chat this policy link about a couple different things that are coming up. We're hearing in the media about who's best for our economy around incentives, tax-related endorsements. Who wants to actually address that? Anybody on the call want to touch that?
I'll just say hi. This is Ryan chiming in. There was a good interview. I've really tried to encourage my students and hopefully encourage your listeners to really go out there. And there's tons of information, but there's so much misinformation and disinformation out there right now. Trying to hear from the candidates themselves, I think, is a good place to do that. And there's no shortage of that. Donald Trump just had an interview the other day from Bloomberg, and they are, a primarily kind of an economics publication. And there was a lot of talk about his plans for the economy. And I thought the interviewer did a really good job on that. And then there was another interview with Charlemagne the God, with Kamala Harris was just in Detroit just yesterday, interviewed by him, and that was another great interview. So I think it's that there's no shortage of going out there and instead of hearing information from different people, even though that's what we're here to do, but you can also find that information yourself really easily now. It really is out there. And trying to weed through it is what hopefully we can help you do tonight. But just hearing from the candidates themselves, there really is no shortage of that.
So can I ask you a question? I looked at Bloomberg. I saw the interview on Bloomberg, and I've been listening to Kamala's economic plan, and at 7 o'clock, a guy from the campaign, Trey Baker, is going to be talking about economics toward the African American male. So to me, Donald Trump is talking about a surcharge, and Kamala, and I heard her in the other previous discussion that the surcharge is bad, would be bad for our economy. So I want to ask this question to the professor: which one is right and which one is wrong?
When you're speaking of the surcharge, you're talking about the tariffs that Trump's proposing. Yeah, I again, I don't want to come off as attacking any candidates or saying that they don't know what they're talking about. But this, I think, is one clear case where if you look at any economist, and it's not just different economists on different sides, that Donald Trump, I don't think, fully understands what a tariff is. A tariff is a tax that the consumer or the person that is purchasing the goods from overseas is going to pay, right? So, and it's not like it's unique to Donald Trump. Joe Biden just put 100% tax on Chinese EVs that were coming into the market, right? Because if we import a car from China and we buy it for $10,000, somebody buys it here to sell to you for $10,000, that's going to undercut every other EV that's on the market in America, right? So by putting that 100% tariff on it, you're essentially charging that person that's buying the car here to sell to an American consumer another $10,000, right? So we're paying either the person that's buying it to sell to a consumer here, or the consumer directly is going to pay that. That is a tax on consumption, and it's usually used to protect our industries, right? That's what it's used for. But when you kind of just do it in the way that Donald Trump's talking about it, in a wide swath of just putting massive amounts of tariffs on anything, that will eventually, I mean, it will directly impact the cost of goods that all Americans are buying.
Can I ask a question?
Can I add something real quick? So the issue isn't simply that the tariff, that additional cost will be passed on to the consumer. The issue is also that there are also two additional issues. One, it's not just whole goods that are imported, right? You also have components that are imported. So even into American-made goods. So what you would see is the cost of components that are imported from abroad. And that cost would also be passed on to the consumer. So it's not just simply foreign goods where the price would go up. The other thing to remember is the rest of the country, the rest of the world actually has the ability to act. And there are a number of international conventions that discourage, in some cases outright sort of prohibit, this kind of protectionist tax. And other countries would respond, right? They would do the same thing.
Yes.
To our goods. So the goods that we're exporting to other countries would suddenly find themselves uncompetitive in their markets, so there's absolutely no part of this that is good for the American consumer, and the amount that the American consumers would pay and the ultimate impact, for example, on the stock market and everything else, it's pretty much universally accepted, it would be a bad thing. And I've heard estimates of anywhere from, basically $5,000 to an extra $10,000 per year that American consumers would pay if Donald Trump actually implemented the tariffs that he's talking about. I mean, almost every country has some, the French protect cheese and the like, but going whole hog on it like that it's absurd. It shows you don't understand how international economics work, is really what it comes down to.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sir Pastor.
Economics is not my expertise, but I saw on CNN where they said that he was going to raise tariffs by as much as 2,000%. If something like that were to happen, wouldn't that put the country in an inflation state like never before and put us back the risk of being in a recession?
It would certainly damage both imports and exports. You would see corporate profits taking a hit. You would see a lack of investment from major corporations. I mean, literally, it wouldn't be good. There's absolutely nobody who would benefit from that happening. It's just wasted money. I mean, arguably, it might generate additional revenue, but that would easily be offset by a decline in, sort of tax revenue, because people would be making less money. So I don't know if it would tip us into, a recession, given that the fundamentals of the American economy are actually pretty strong at the moment, but it would not be a nice thing at all.
Also, could it cause a trade war if we get caught up in this kind of going back and forth on the surcharge, the tariffs?
Oh, yes, without a doubt, it would. Other countries are already discussing how they would respond, what they would place tariffs on. I mean, a lot of America's agriculture relies heavily on exports, right? You think farmers aren't happy now? Wait till, China and Europe and South America suddenly aren't buying any of the things that they're producing. So yeah, other countries would respond. They've already talked about it. It's not an if, it's how.
Guys, I got someone who just sent me a text. I couldn't get them to call in and talk so that everybody could hear it, but I'm going to relay the question. How is it we can use taxpayer dollars to actually pay for illegal immigrants to be housed in hotels, but there is no relief for people who actually are being evicted from their homes since, they can't afford to keep up with the housing prices?
Legit question. I can take it if no one else has an immediate response.
I think it's a political issue that Donald Trump, if he really wanted to solve the issue, he should have signed on to that conservative bill from the senator of Oklahoma that they negotiated and brought it to fruition, and Donald Trump killed it. I think it's all politics, pitting races against each other, and that's my opinion.
I mean, there's certainly an element of that. As far as the specific sort of benefits that immigrants get, you have to remember you can't just say everybody who's coming in the country is, make sure we don't say illegal. I mean, people who are here who've migrated following American immigration laws, people who we actually have an international obligation to accept refugees in many instances, right, from a war. That's not something we can just not do. We as a country have already obligated ourselves to do that. But if you're talking about people who have come into this country with, essentially without permission, what you're talking about is, okay, so what are we going to do with them? So ultimately, they're going to have a hearing to decide whether or not they get to stay or not, because almost everybody who comes into the country, if they're, crossing, what people call illegally, what they're going to say is, I am fleeing from, war or oppression. I have a specific reason to be afraid for my life. So we have to do something until their hearing. We've done a horrible job actually having enough judges and such available to actually hear them. So what are we going to do? Well, sort of, there's a real problem with locking people up. You're not really allowed to do that. So do you just want to allow these people who to just sort of roam the street and be homeless? You can't stop immigration. We're a country of immigrants. Our population wouldn't be growing if it weren't for immigration, really. We wouldn't have a lot of the jobs filled that we do if it weren't for immigration. We have a legal obligation to take a number of immigrants. So the question becomes, how do you handle them? And so I would say what Keith Williams said is true. They're pitting us against each other because the money that's being spent on immigrants, don't go comparing that to, don't say, well, why don't you pay for like Americans? You should be looking at, what I would say is look at how much money we're giving away to corporations. I mean, you've given, $18 billion or more this year to Israel. We've given, tens of billions of dollars to Ukraine. Now, I happen to think some of those investments are worthwhile, but there are a lot of other things that you could say we should not be spending money on before you come to keeping human beings who are fleeing from, economic disaster or whatever, keeping them with a roof over their head. I mean, I think as a moral country, do we really want to just say you're in the street?
But Eric, this reminds me of the affirmative action law that they used as a wedge issue when Father Bush and Ronald Reagan, you're getting an unfair advantage. They're getting a hookup, however you want to put it. It's the same issue they've been using to drive races against each other.
You don't need a political scientist
Always been
here. This is the political scientist, but you didn't need me. You just identified it as a wedge issue, and that's exactly what it is, right?
Exactly.
It's used to divide communities against each other that otherwise might be on the same page around things like this. And just to echo both of your points, that immigrants, if you look at the statistics, on average, overwhelmingly commit less crime than average Americans. They, think about it. If you're here as an immigrant, as going through the asylum process, or even if you've come over the border, you don't want to get caught, or you don't want to do something that was wrong, something illegal that could put you into the, deny your asylum claim in some ways. So it's just a lot of the kind of scare tactic, right, around the other, like trying to other these people that are just trying to escape things. And again, to Mr. Williams' point, the long-term consequences of not doing something to help people in these cases is what actually ends up creating problems for us in the long run, right? I mean, if these people aren't taken care of, that's when they turn to crime. That's when they turn to the underground market, right? We've seen this over and over again in poverty in stricken communities, regardless of race, right? Race is not an issue here. When it gets into white, Black communities, immigrant communities, when they aren't allowed into the system, they turn to the underground economy. And that's where then you're spending money on police forces, judges, all these other things, right? And that's all money that could be spent on actually helping people rather than policing people.
Right.
For our listening audience, the number in the studio, 313-837-1340. I'm really looking to hear from you. What questions do you have? How can we help you be better informed and make the right decisions to do what needs to happen for that first Tuesday in November? We need to see more activation in the state of Michigan. Not to tout what I've seen in the polls, but if you've looked at the polls, there's a very slim percentage of you, and I'm talking directly to the people who've not been committed or decided about what you should do, who you should vote for. What questions do you have? We have an entire panel of what we consider experts, and we've got even our minister on. So there were some conversations about the church and what Christians can do. Where are you at? I want to hear from you. 313-837-1340. Guys, one of the conversations that had come up that I got a text on was an ad piece that talked a little bit about the sex changes. I'm seeing it like every 10 seconds in some media outlet about federal tax dollars being used for people to have sex changes. Who wants to attack that one? Is that real? Is the
I'll
federal
take it.
government doing that? Like, what's going on?
Right. So if you are incarcerated, right, and you have a heart attack, the government pays for you to recover. If you have, I mean, there's insurance that actually is, sort of related to this. But the point is, if you are in government custody, right, then the government pays for things. So I think there's one kind of an overblown issue. I don't know how often this actually happens. I'm not, and I've heard a variety of different things about whether or not it's done. But if this is an issue for you, you should I would say this, take into account how frequently it happens. It's the same sort of thing with trans women participating in, or, in sports against cis women. And, regardless of how you feel about it, you can't really get too upset because it doesn't happen that often, right? In a lot of the states where they're complaining about it, it never happens. So I guess the question would be, if this is something that upsets you, is it the expenditure that's upsetting you? In which case I would say, given the way our prison system operates, this is probably real small peanuts to be worried about the actual money. Is it just simply a matter of principle where you don't think people should have gender changing, operations or therapy? In which case you have to decide whether or not what someone else does with their body matters that much to you, and why? Or is it just sort of a matter of principle that we shouldn't be spending any money whatsoever to support the trans community? In which case I would say, these are still American citizens that working out. These are still people in American custody, and I don't quite understand why you would be inhumane. If it's on religious grounds, religion is a reason to love people, not hate them.
Another wedge issue.
Exactly, another wedge issue. I think the amount of money, I would imagine that the amount of money that is spent on this nationwide is probably less than a rounding error in the budget of virtually every federal department. So you can't really be upset about the money. If that is something that concerns you, and I can understand, maybe it does, but take a deep breath and think about why. And then think about why is something that's so small being hyped up so big. And again, it comes down to that. It's a wedge issue.
So
And
Laura,
I
we're gonna
believe it's actually written in law. It's not one candidate or another, right? So it's on the books. It's not something that a particular candidate we're going to
Yeah.
just incorporate that, right? Go ahead, Ryan.
so Laura, at 7 o'clock, we're gonna take a station break, and then Trey come in.
Neighborhood beautification is very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community, because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be, all because I live in Detroit.
Detroit groups like Tammy's can get up to $15,000 to beautify their neighborhood through the Neighborhood Beautification Program. Learn more at detroitmi.gov/Detroit for Life.
Okay.
For a century, music and ministry, 24 hours a day. WCHB AM 1340, Royal Oak, Detroit. The voice of the church. Streaming online at WCHB1340.com.
Okay, we're back.
Yes.
Yeah, Trey. Is Trey Baker on the line?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Trey. This is Trey from the Kamala Harris campaign. He's got some exciting news about economics towards African-American males. And so he's my friend. I've been knowing the guy since the 2020 campaign when he was working for Joe Biden. Now he's working for a wonderful candidate. So how you doing, Trey?
Doing well, Keith. I appreciate y'all having me on. I am here in Detroit. Um, ran up on you today, and now I'm over at Pencil Lewis College for an event that we're having around Black entrepreneurship. And it's economic freedom talks where we're talking specifically to Black-owned business leaders as a part of the opportunity economy that Vice President Harris has laid out. So really happy to be here, happy to be in your city, happy to have run into you today. And I appreciate the opportunity to come on the platform and talk a little bit more.
So what is the vice president's economic program?
So specifically this week, she laid out an economic opportunity program for Black men. And I can tell y'all are super astute at what's going on. It oftentimes doesn't help a candidate to lay out something so specific for a specific group of people, especially Black folks. But the vice president recognized that systemically, there's an imperative from history that we recognize and do something about the issues that are plaguing the Black community, and particularly Black men in terms of opportunities. So she laid out a couple of things. One, she laid out the opportunity to give $1,020,000 forgivable loans for people who are starting businesses. Additionally, she laid out a program for healthcare, a program that will help to identify some of the things that plague our community, but then also help us with healthcare for our families. So many Black men are concerned about, for me, for instance, I'm looking to grow a family on this side, but also looking to protect my family and take care of an older mother who is currently, aging and will maybe need care somewhere here along the line. And so having the opportunity to advance Medicare in a way that could take care of seniors is a powerful portion of this. And then there was a piece on cryptocurrency, and then there was another piece around decriminalizing marijuana as a pathway to open up the opportunities to that greater economy around cannabis. And so I think it's it's something, the first of its kind, where someone has been very specific about Black men in a policy form. President Biden laid out the policy for Black America, the Lift Every Voice policy. There's so much of the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan came out of that. But this is specifically around helping Black men. And this is not to say that she's not helping other groups. I mean, her policies will help Americans across the board. And so that's what she is about. Earlier this year, in 2023 also, she started an economic opportunity tour where she went around the country talking to small business owners in an effort to lift them up and get them the resources that they needed. So I like to say she's not new to this, she's true to this. She's been doing this work. She's been on the record with this. And so she's going to continue to do it. And we were very fortunate to lay out this plan right before we came to Detroit. She came to Detroit and had a lot of engagements in the city, and she's going to be right back here in Michigan here this weekend. So we're spending a lot of time with it and a lot of effort. And I think it's something that's, first of its kind and going to be phenomenal for the community.
So I'm going to open this. If anybody want to ask some questions, okay, Trey. How do we get this good news out into the marketplace? Because all you hear in this noise, and she isn't doing this, and young Black males they're mad right now. So how do we get that to them and convince them that her policy is going to work for her?
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing we can do is let people hear it directly out of her mouth. She's on the record. She was on the record in an interview that she did right here in Detroit. And she talked through this policy, and she talked through why she was doing it, and she talked through what she wanted to do. I think when people get to know Kamala Harris, they understand that she's for them, she's for the people. And so that's the first step of this. But the second step, and I think the more important step, is that we have to arm ourselves and arm the people around us with the information that they need to carry the message out, whether that's getting those resources into the community, which Keith, me and you have talked about a ton, or it's coming on platforms like this and making sure those around you understand exactly what's going on. Y'all had a conversation earlier just about the trans care situation, and so it's good to elevate those things because there's so much misinformation and disinformation that comes out of it that someone needs to clear the record. I was on a panel today and I had to clear the record up about the STEMIs, for instance, the stimulus checks after COVID-19. I mean, people attribute that to Donald Trump because he went and put his name all over. But that was the product of a Democratic Congress who saw a need. They saw an even greater need. They started at $3,600. They wanted to do those checks, and they eventually got whittled down over the course of Republican haggling. And once Trump saw that he had no choice, he put his name on it.
Can I ask a
But that was the
question?
Republican Congress that passed it. Absolutely, you can come on in.
That information that you just shared, that the vision that she has for the businesses and the Black men, can you, because I'm from now until it's voting time, I'm trying to somewhere in the midst of the service do a little education. I have some bullet points that I'm going to be discussing. Could you possibly email me that to pastorshome@hotmail.com? And it's plural, PASTORS, home, like you live in, HOME.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
I'll take care of that.
Can we go back? Because just when you were getting on, Trey, we were just at station break. So one of the questions that was posed was, is this a Kamala thing, going to do this whole sex or transgender thing in the prisons or what have you? I really want there to be some clarity on the fact that it's already on the books. This was not a Kamala thing. Can somebody address that?
Well, first of all, it's just complete misinformation and disinformation, right? The clip that they take in that commercial is her talking about giving care. I think it was Brother Williams who pointed out that if somebody has a heart attack while they're in jail, then they get care. That was a greater clip that was pulled of her just talking about people getting health care while incarcerated. And then they spliced it over this conversation about the trans community. So first of all, that particular commercial is a damn lie to begin with. But I think in terms of people, it's a question of when people either have gender reassignment before they enter prison and they need care once they're there. Questions around what kind of care they can receive. I think that's something that has been dealt with across many administrations and not something that is necessarily specific to the president, but rather state penitentiaries, the federal system itself, the Department of Corrections. And so there are a number of actors that play a part in that. And so I think anything in terms of Kamala Harris specifically doing something in that regard, it's just complete misinformation and disinformation. But I think what's lost in this is a question about compassion and a question about just doing right by human beings and trying to provide service and healthcare to folks, whatever the case is. And so I think that's the piece that we need to focus on, is that if someone needs care, if someone needs life-saving care for one reason or another, then we should be the kind of country that gives people the care that they need.
So, any other questions, folks?
Could I also add one last thing to this? It ultimately is, as was said, just a wedge issue. But the other thing is this: for the most part, people who are incarcerated aren't incarcerated by the federal government. Most people who are incarcerated in state prisons, and it's largely state law that governs the sort of the conditions of their incarceration. And when you talk about if the federal government is involved, that means that there's been a federal right, one of your constitutional rights that's been implicated. And if it's been decided that this is, that this violates a law, that was something that was determined probably by a federal judge somewhere. So it's not a presidential thing, really, to be perfectly honest about it. It's not even, if you listed all the things the president does, that wouldn't be on the list, right? And it's not something an attorney general does. It's not something a senator does. So an attempt to try to, make this is what Kamala's doing is just, it's BS, really. As you said, it's a wedge issue.
Yeah, if I can just hop in too with some facts on it. And this is another one of those things where I think, again, a quick Google search, you could go, there's plenty of places out there that you can trust. I think one of them is factcheck.org is really good, because
Yes.
not only is it going to give you the facts, it's going to give you the sources, right? So it's not just some
Exactly.
website. You can actually, it will show you at the bottom the sources where they're getting their information from. And to Mr. Williams's point, which he just said, you're spot on, sir. From your estimation, is that Kamala Harris has never been in the position to rule on this, because she has never been a federal judge, and that's how it was actually ruled on. When this first came into people's radars from a questionnaire that she answered in 2019, but the first gender affirming surgery didn't happen in a U.S. federal prison until 2022, and that was ruled on by a federal judge. And I don't know the facts of the case. I haven't dug in that deep, but I imagine it's what you said, probably something along the lines of the 14th Amendment and equal protection, where everybody, regardless of who you are, your gender, your race, that you are entitled to equal protection under the laws of our country. And that constitutional amendment, which is considered the most important constitutional amendment, comes right out of what makes America really great, which is that we're all treated equally, or supposed to be treated equally under the law. That's the foundational principles of this country. So I think it's, again, just a wedge issue. And if you look at the facts of it, it's the numbers on it are minute. I think at least from the sources I've seen, a handful of these surgeries have been done, and like to your point, only a couple in federal prisons. Again, she's never been in that position to make that decision.
So,
Guys, for that clarity, I really appreciate it. The number in the studio, this is your last opportunity while we have this much talent all in one space. You were boisterous last week. Let's hear from you. 313-837-1340. What are your questions? What do you need us to talk about so that we can level set, make sure that you have the right information?
So Trey, I'm really interested in the forgivable loans on small businesses. Is it or is it the loans we got during COVID? Is that what you're trying to eliminate, or new businesses that get into a difficult period and they need relief?
It's essentially capital for people who are starting businesses. So
Okay.
it's $20,000 in capital, and it'll be a program that's essentially a partnership between the SBA and community banks that will drive the forgivable loan. So a number of like kind of a public-private partnership, people getting together and deciding that it's an important use for these community banks and wanting to put that out in the streets and help people who want to get capital for their businesses. But so check this. You got that, which is one part of the program, $20,000 to start a business as capital. But the other thing that she's proposing that she did, not in this package, but just beforehand, was she wanted to raise the tax incentive, the tax credit for people who start businesses from $5,000 to $50,000, right? And so you can basically, what she's saying is we can get $20,000 in capital that's forgivable on the front end, and on the back end there's a $50,000 tax incentive for first-time small business owners. So across the board, it's a great opportunity for people who are looking to become entrepreneurs or to expand out their businesses. to be a part of this opportunity economy in Chicago.
Oh, another thing too, I was at a barbershop Saturday, and I was talking to this young brother. Obviously, he didn't know civics. And he said, well, Kamala did this. And I said, Kamala is the vice president, and she serves at the pleasure of the president. So how can we, from the standpoint, how do we clarify that? Because she's not the president.
It's an amazing thing. And she said it in the debate. She's not Joe Biden. Like, this is the Biden-Harris administration with Joe Biden leading on this administration. And so there are differences between her and Joe Biden for sure. But yeah, I agree with you, Keith. Donald Trump is trying to make Kamala Harris the most powerful vice president of all time. He says that she's responsible for, yeah, she's responsible for the border. She's responsible for the economy. She's responsible for school kids' education. She's responsible, like, there's no way that a vice president has done this much and is responsible for these many things that he's putting on her. But I will.
Pros.
Thank you, Pros there. Could I say one thing about Kamala the border?
Yes.
Please.
So people keep saying she was the border czar and therefore
decriminalizing marijuana. She wants to take further some of the small business situation that she wants to do. And so it looks like my connection was unstable. So sorry if you couldn't hear me. But she wants to continue on some of this work. She wants to protect the progress that was made. But she also wants to be the person who moves us into the future. And that's the key here. And I'm going to have to jump in a minute, Keith, because I'm at this other event here in Detroit. But what I also want to say, and I talked about this in an earlier panel that I was doing, we got to have some real discussion about the Supreme Court and what Supreme Court justices mean in our lives. Last time we had a woman at the top of the ticket, we had a lot of hemming and hawing about Hillary Clinton and emails and all the other kind of pretexts that people are using right now with Kamala Harris. And what did that net us? That netted us 3 Supreme Court justices who just cleared the path for Donald Trump to do whatever he wants to do in office. It cleared the path for them to run down voting rights, civil rights of all kind, affirmative action. And so as we have these conversations, we also have to think about this big picture. Is the next president who's elected will have the opportunity to appoint 2 to 3 Supreme Court justices. And what it would mean to have Trump to get another 2 to 3 justices would be a disaster for our country and for democracy in and of itself. So that's why it's so important that beyond this, beyond the misinformation, disinformation, we're talking about the future of our country and the future of our judiciary.
So we want to thank you for coming on. Laura's back. You can finish your point, Eric.
Oh, yes. So what I was quickly going to say is that when you talk about disinformation, one of the things that you frequently hear is that Kamala was border czar and had some authority over the border, and so she is therefore to blame for issues regarding immigration. But the truth is that wasn't what she was charged with. So the idea, her portfolio, so to speak, with regard to the border was to examine the reason for the surge in immigration, right? To take a look at what was the cause. And so that involved looking at the domestic political situations of countries in South and Central America. She wasn't actually ever charged with trying to figure out a way to stem illegal immigration. So to say she's responsible for that, again, it's like getting mad at your mechanic because you don't like the color of your car's interior. That's not why you put the car in the shop. That's not what his job was. And so again, it's just misinformation, trying to confuse people and blame her for things for which she had no responsibility and absolutely no authority for that matter.
Okay, I just wanted to go back. This is way back to the beginning of this conversation as we talk about immigration. We talk as if there's only one border. The United States actually has 4 borders. There's the southern, the northern, east, and west. We have more undocumented immigrants or people who overstayed their visas coming in through those other 3 areas than come across the southern border. Just saying. Second thing is, illegal immigrants pay taxes that they'll never get back. If they pay sales taxes, they pay use taxes. If they have an undocumented Social Security number, they're paying into Social Security. They can't apply for Social Security, but they're paying into the system. Many of our illegal, undocumented, they overstay their visas and they're teaching in our universities. They're working in many other jobs other than what we like to think of. That's just to straighten this out, everybody. But we don't count folks that come in and fly in and just stay. We don't count what's coming over the Canadian border, which is larger and longer than the Mexican border. I thought you'd stop smoking, Eric. Anyway.
What the man do?
And you know, we've got the Pacific Ocean, we've got the Atlantic Ocean, we've got the Canadian border. We got 4 borders, people.
Yeah, but brown people aren't coming across most of those other borders.
Well, yeah, but they're flying in though. But you know, they're flying in. You know, we got flights that go to the continent. We have flights that go to Asia. They're coming in and they're staying, and we can't track them.
Can I?
So all of you who think they're not going to track me because I came in another way, they're just going to round up everybody who looks like you. Okay, that's it.
Oh, yeah.
Can I ask the professor about teaching civics? Why are some of the high schools in Michigan are not teaching civics?
As a college professor, I don't know. They're sending them to me. I have a lot of dual I have a lot of dual enrollment in early college students, and let me just say, I can't say enough about them. They are absolutely fantastic. I have so many students that are in high school and then come to college, come to Macomb to do their work jointly, and just the quality of the students right now, though, that I see. They're really engaged. Michigan had the highest youth voter turnout in the country in the 2022 election.
Nice.
And we've been doing a lot of work around at Macomb. I know we're going to run out of time, so if I can just make this one point before we do. Your vote it's not only important to vote, but as a Michigander, anybody anywhere in Michigan, your vote is so powerful in this election. And this election is going to be close. Every polling agency has it as a coin flip. If we forget, the 2016 election was decided in Michigan by less than 12,000 votes.
Yep.
And it is going to be not just one of the closest, if not maybe the closest election, is what everything is pointing to, that as a swing state, there's only a handful of states that matters, and Michigan is one of them. So anybody out there that's listening, regardless of partisanship, you have so much more power in your hands than you realize right now, and you really should do everything you can to educate yourself with these few weeks left and get out there and vote. And like was mentioned earlier, early voting starts a week from this Saturday, so there's no excuse now. You have 9 days where you can go to a polling location in your city that you can find from the Secretary of State's website, and they're going to be open every single day from 8 to 5 that you can go vote in person. So just make your voice heard. It is more important probably than it's been in quite a long time. We are a young democracy. We say we're the oldest democracy, but if you look, I just got done teaching civil rights section in my class. We're a 60-year-old democracy. I just got to say, I'm the only white person that in this call. And the reality is that 60 years ago, we enfranchised people that were not enfranchised in this country. We are a 60-year-old democracy. And these things are fragile. We should not take this for granted. And I just wanted to say, I appreciate you bringing me in and letting me speak a little bit. And I just hope everybody gets out there and make their voices heard. Thank you.
Can I say something to Ryan and Eric, and if I'm wrong, y'all can help me. And Ryan, first I want to say preach. Um, when you mention about America supporting the war against Russia because they're our allies, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, the world is primarily made up of democratic dictatorships and communism. And because we are the largest, though a fledgling democracy, we have an obligation to support our allies, because what a lot of people don't realize is the world has never had any length of peace. There's always some war going on. And countries like Russia and China, if we don't support our allies, historically, Russia or China will run over them, and then who will be the next ones that they'll come after? It would be us. Am I about right in that?
Yeah, I mean, my PhD was in comparative politics, international relations, and I saw, Mr. Williams, that you studied this as well. And we live in really turbulent times where there's more democracies than there's ever been, but we've never really seen this in the history of any of the world, really, where we're seeing what we call backsliding and rolling back of democracy, even in America, right? In the oldest quote unquote democracy in the world. And my fear is that let's not be mistaken. America's done terrible things. We've supported horrible leaders and dictators around the world. We also support democracies. We've done both, but we do stand on principles. We have principles that we can elevate, right? And if we forsake those principles, I don't know who else can promote those. And it sounds like American exceptionalism in some ways, but it's also institutionally, it is true that if we don't support other places like this, if we don't support these institutions around the world, other countries that don't value these institutions or don't have them, that support human rights, civil rights, civil liberties, that these things, again, are fragile. And I don't think enough people realize this. So yeah, thank you again for letting me.
So in the final analysis, to me, it gets back to want to make America great again. Ronald Reagan was the first person that said it to me, but I think our history is some of these folks want to make the world great again when they controlled everything, when nobody had freedoms, and democracy was just a word. So I don't know, Laura, how many minutes we got left?
I told the engineer to drop it, so keep going.
So can I add one thing to what Ryan was saying, and that's this goes beyond just supporting our allies. The international stage has been relatively peaceful in large part because we have these institutions like the United Nations and everything else that actually have rules. And the biggest rule is you don't get to invade foreign countries.
Exactly.
Right? And that global order has benefited America, but it's also benefited the world. And if we let such a fundamental rule just get tossed out the window, right, that we don't have a leg to stand on anywhere else. It's one of the reasons we run into problems when we suddenly seem like hypocrites, because we'll allow our allies to do one thing, even though international law says, something else. That's kind of the American exceptionalism you were talking about. It's in America's best interest to strengthen institutions and legal regimes that promote stability, right? So
guys, hold on.
Yeah, that's
farewell, WCHB 1340. We'll see you next week. Keep going.
I gotta leave.
The one thing I was going to say, Keith asked about civics.
They need your help. They need volunteers. They need donations.
The state of Michigan used to require civics before graduation. Your wonderful state legislators took it out of the high school curriculum, at which point they made it optional. It used to be a requirement to graduate. When we were in school, you had to have civics. You didn't have to have anything else, but you had to have civics in order to graduate with a diploma. Your wonderful state legislators didn't think that was necessary and took it out of the curriculum. Well, when you make something optional, slowly it begins to go away. Teachers don't teach it. Students don't learn it. And if you look at how Michigan State politics have gone, where we used to be near the top in education, we've slowly slid down. But because we have weakened our curriculum. I remember some years ago listening to something, and there was a legislator from Cadillac, Michigan, who said he didn't understand why foreign languages were a requirement because nobody was going to leave Cadillac, Michigan anyway. How do you know? You've just crippled your high school population.
Well,
That's it.
I want to tell
Sadly,
you guys,
you're right.
I want to all of you, thank you so much for joining this call, and so last minute and impromptu. And I'm really upset that we didn't have callers call in after we had such a robust and crazy following last week. This week, nobody said anything, and then some of the callers wanted to text but would not call. So it's okay. I think we did exactly what was intended. Thank you so much for level setting and clarifying some of the misinformation and disinformation. I think they have a better understanding. And that was really all we wanted to do. They felt confused or broken or not sure. And I wanted to be sure that we addressed their issues. They didn't call, but we gave them a chance.
Carissa from
So,
Michigan Insurance was there.
thank you guys.
I just
Love
want
you,
to thank you.
Chris.
I just want to thank you for inviting me in the wealth of knowledge that I was able to gain on tonight. Thank you very much.
Excellent. I
Yeah,
thank
but,
you for that, Pastor.
I want to echo that.
Yeah, same. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. It was wonderful
I'll
to meet
send you guys
everybody.
recording too. So thank you so much.
All right.
Yeah,
Good night.
thanks for blowing me up there, Linda. Have a good one.
You on the radio, you lit it up. I'm like, what?
They can't see him. They can't see him.
But I can't.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.